GM, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Super Phoenix live DAO with a special guest, the CEO of Star Atlas, Michael, and our very own founder, Craig. Super excited for this conversation today as we discuss the future of gaming and entertainment. Let's head over to Craig first. How are you, buddy? Great to see you today.
Yeah, doing well. Thanks, Pav. This is great. I appreciate you kind of hopping on here with us and co-hosting as we get to chat more with Michael.
Amazing. And Michael, how are you? I'm jealous of the t-shirt. I have to say that straight off the bat.
Yeah, man, I came properly dressed today. Craig's making me look like a slob here, with full professional attire. But great to be here, guys, and really excited about what Craig is doing with the Super Phoenix DAO and the progress being made there. And I know we have a great conversation lined up today, so happy to be here.
Yeah, really appreciate you taking the time. Super excited, especially with what you guys are building over at Star Atlas, and of course the updates that we have that are coming out thick and fast from the Super Phoenix DAO. So much is cooking, and I'm really, really excited about that. Craig, just for anyone who is here for the first time, if you can give us a very quick introduction into the Super Phoenix DAO, and then we'll head over to Michael to see what it is that he's excited about with the DAO, and then we'll head into our conversation.
Sounds great. Yeah, thanks, Pav. Yeah, I guess for anybody new, right, taking a look at Super Phoenix DAO. Effectively, we're kind of working on the entertainment side of everything that's in Web3 and gaming and kind of that crossroad. So really, we're looking at becoming the virtual Vegas, right, within these game universes. So pretty excited about it.
I love that. And talking of gaming universes, obviously we have Michael, the CEO and founder over at Star Atlas. Tell us a little bit about Star Atlas and Super Phoenix DAO and how that's come together and why you're so excited about it.
Well, Craig didn't tell me anything about the casinos in Star Atlas with the virtual Vegas, but I do think the Super Phoenix DAO could be an entertainment capital within Star Atlas. And so what we're building that helps facilitate this type of concept or this model that Craig's working towards is an ultra high fidelity space adventure open world MMO. We're building that in Unreal Engine 5. So it's really best in class graphical fidelity and immersion within a game. But really beyond that, and for anyone, similarly that hasn't heard too much about Star Atlas or hasn't been following our journey, I think Star Atlas is much bigger than gaming. We really are building out an entire ecosystem. And when I think about the potential of what Star Atlas is as a digital universe or digital world is, I've been using this term cybernation, which is kind of in contrast to metaverse, which I think is really more maybe interconnected entertainment focused. But where I see this cybernation concept emerging is that we're building this global borderless digital game environment and digital economy that's full of opportunity for people to come in, to play, to socialize, to capitalize and monetize, to build their own businesses and to participate in this new economy and these new labor markets in ways that were never present before. And we really want that opportunity to be available to people all over the world. And that's true of people that maybe will come in and play the game, but it's also true for people who, again, will build businesses within this world and essentially target as a market the people that are and citizens of Star Atlas.
Wow, yeah, it's an incredible conversation, especially where we're seeing, the economy moving online and market share and mind share moving online, and the rate at which things are being developed within games and entertainment as well. So I wanted to just go straight into that. In terms of games becoming more than places we just play, becoming full in like entertainment ecosystems. How does Star Atlas's vision sort of fit into that? Like, what forms of entertainment do you see emerging in these virtual spaces that you're talking about, or in this cybernation?
Well, I do think the possibilities are virtually endless here, but probably one of the more prominent examples of entertainment were some of the concert series that were hosted in Fortnite. For example, Travis Scott, I think, brought in 1 million virtual viewers to a concert. So I think we'll talk about it a bit more later in the conversation, but an outstanding question that I even have is how do we create deep immersion and engagement and a sense of being present at an event when it is fully digital and fully online. but just the ability to socialize with other people is really a core component of gaming, first of all, and in particular, very critical to MMOs. I mean, the emergence of MMOs was the ability to play with a massive number of other players all in an online environment. And so I think that's one avenue. Now, I don't know if I would say this next example is necessarily entertainment, but I do think things like digital conferences, for example, can exist in the game as well. So you're hosting presentations to people within these worlds. And I could see that happening for our guilds who have a guild hall, or DACs as we call them,
Yeah.
decentralized autonomous corporations, as well as just having big conferences move fully into a digital space, and you effectively eliminate any type of requirement for travel. You're able to meet and socialize in a central location that just happens to be online. And then otherwise, I think just general forms of socialization. You can add mini games. We have player habitats, for example, so houses that are in the game, and just being able to meet online with your digital avatar and hang out and play the game and socialize with your friends.
Yeah, it's a conversation Craig and I have had offline and in previous shows as well, just about that barrier to entry that it completely eradicates, right? Like you're saying, a million people at a concert, that's just not going to happen physically. And in terms of costs and amenities and people's, ability to be able to do that, it can be incredibly difficult for someone to see, Travis Scott anywhere else. Whereas doing it within game, you can have so many more people doing that. So as a gaming creator, or as a creator in general, you're reaching a number of people or a market that you never would have been able to, which really opens up your mind share essentially. Craig, I wanted to get your take on, and again, this conversation is for people who aren't necessarily familiar with this online entertainment conversation or within game entertainment or conversation. You know, Many gaming platforms are incorporating music and films and live events into their worlds. How does Super Phoenix DAO approach the fusion of gaming and entertainment? What's at the forefront of your mind when you think of those two words?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're heavily focused on that piece, right? So that's the component that Super Phoenix DAO is really looking to kind of bring into this new Web3 gaming and this kind of space. And obviously, we're benefiting from kind of the high fidelity, hyper realistic environments that Star Atlas is building. But yeah, really, we're looking at drawing in, targeting current gamers that are in these markets, but also drawing in even non-gamers at some point. As we alluded to before, the way Fortnite's been able to do it with some of their massive audiences is pretty remarkable. So I think there's very clear demand, and we're sort of at that. I picture the Super Phoenix DAO to be at a crossroad of kind of where those things are going and where they're headed, and to be able to facilitate that for folks by becoming the hub, becoming the venue, the go-to location that folks want to socialize and be at, even if maybe there isn't a massive event that particular day, right? I think we were just talking about some of the numbers, and I looked that up just recently. I think Fortnite had its all-time, just blew the records out of the water. I think they had a huge event in November. That was Remix, I believe, right, with Snoop and Eminem and Ice Spice and whatever. Anyway, they clocked over 14 million people on that one in November, which is pretty amazing, honestly.
Yeah, staggering numbers. Michael, what do you think is driving this, right? It's not just it's a lower barrier to entry for people to arrive and people to do these things. Do you think there's a shift in how people are operating within game and online? And how's Star Atlas looking at that and sort of strategizing around that?
Yeah, I think the low barrier to entry or zero barrier to entry is probably the driving force, to be perfectly honest. Low cost or free in most cases, right? Also, not having to pay $20 for a beer or a hot dog at a stadium or wherever wherever the venue is. Uh, I mean, what we're looking at is really creating the initial migration into this digital society of sorts, and we do use gaming as the cornerstone of that. There's this idea of player collisions in MMOs, which is effectively you want to be encountering other players as you're playing the game, because that is really part and parcel to what it is to build an MMO. If you're not running into other players and interacting with other players, then you're not really playing. Are you really playing an online multiplayer game? And so For us, what I think is critical is that we're able to drive engagement and interest in the core concept of Star Atlas. And from there, other concepts around socialization, entertainment, events can all flourish. But what's important is that we get people there in the first place. This is partially why, in my opinion, Fortnite has been so successful, is that with these entertainment events, is that it's already an incredibly popular game. There's
Yeah.
already a lot of people that have the client downloaded on their computer. They're engaging or playing it in some cases on a daily basis anyway. And so when this opportunity is presented to them to, hey, just log in and there's an event at your fingertips, people will go and join and participate in that event.
Yeah, and Craig, I wanted your take on, and again, I know we've discussed this offline as well, but I'd be keen to hear it now. Like, do you see a future where games replace traditional like social media as we know it, as these like traditional social media interactions? So, you know, whereas now you can go on X or Instagram, that's great, but you know, if you can go in game and then play game and then go to an event or go to a casino, are you creating a place where people are harboring much stronger relationships, and therefore do you see that trend merging in that direction more so than traditionally how it is now?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think I definitely think it's going to change. I don't see social media going away per se, but I would think most people agree that social media has definitely changed in the last few years, at least. Even if you look at Facebook and those types of things, it used to be very social, and you would just be on each other's walls and friends and family, and now your feed is much more like everything's kind of been turned into TikTok to some extent, right? To gain attention and all of that stuff. And yeah, so I believe there will be kind of a shift, and gaming really does offer that shared experience, right? Which is a huge component of kind of the socialization piece of it. So being able to interact, in a 3D environment and kind of have that shared experience, I do think is going to start to probably move some of those interactions and that social connection, from maybe the sort of two-dimensional, if you will, and social media, and move it into the three-dimensional space, like we're talking about with our entertainment venues, games like Star Atlas, etc.
Yeah, it's a incredibly interesting conversation just to see how that user behavior is going to change and how like Super Phoenix Down and Star Atlas are going to be integral to that. I wanted to touch on virtual economies, Michael, and I wanted to come to you for this and player-driven markets. You know, in-game economies are becoming incredibly complex. Like, you know, with virtual assets having real-world value. How are you managing this? What are your thoughts on that change, and how important is this, you know, as a thing in gaming?
Well, I think it's really a driving force and one of the core value propositions of Web3 in particular. Now, if I take a step back, virtual economies have existed and persisted in video games for decades now. I mean, the earliest online games all had some version of an economy. Players were extracting items, discovering loot, trading with other players. These items all um, at least conceptually had some level of real world value. However, the position of the gaming industry historically has been that there's no way to monetize or capitalize on that real world value. And in fact, in most cases, it was explicitly prohibited in terms of service to be able to exchange these items or accounts with other people. In fact, going back to the late 90s, early 2000s, I was playing a game called Asheron's Call, which was a very early MMO around the time of EverQuest. And I had built up a couple of accounts and sold those accounts. They had some good gear on them, and I was able to sell those accounts through eBay. But it was, shortly after that, that type of user behavior became banned. It was prohibited, and you weren't allowed to sell those accounts. And so, one of the core innovations in a way of Web3 is that we're not just allowing it, we're embracing it and encouraging the ownership of these assets. And so, I think it's kind of a couple of different things. It's the idea of NFTs, that you can own, possess, control your assets, and you can freely trade those with other users. Now in Star Atlas, we've built a marketplace out which specifically enables you to do that. And that goes from every single base resource in the game, to equipment, to modules, to components, to full ships, capital assets like spaceships, like the Super Phoenix Titan, for example, or land assets or land plots or commercial buildings. Like all of these things can be player owned and freely traded. But we're also working on systems that allow people to capture value of time spent in the game as well. So just your account in general, your character progression, the XP systems, these all exist under profiles that are linked to your crypto wallet that we want to facilitate an exchange. So if you are a player and you're engaged in Star Atlas, and perhaps your profitability in the game is very low, but you're willing to spend the time to grind an account to level it up, well, that leveled up account has value as well. And so one entire game loop or economic loop for our users is to simply spend time in game, gain that progression, and then be able to exchange that with other users. Now, in terms of sustainability of economics within any game and any MMO economy, I think there's probably no second best to what we're doing right now and what we've been able to accomplish. One of the tenets that we've seen in Web3 is kind of very volatile cycles within economies. So a hyperinflationary window where there's a lot of game economy tokens coming out as part of the emission curve and incentive structure, which is really successful at attracting a lot of people early on. Where it fails, however, is in retaining those users and keeping them in the game, because inevitably that incentive structure fails. It just simply is not sustainable. And when that incentive structure goes away, so do the majority of the players who are engaged in that product simply for the high incentive structure. And so our model has very much been around correlating the amount that you can earn effectively with the amount of capital investment that you've placed into the game. So the more assets you own, the more you can earn off of the game. But that also creates more of a captive audience, as well as creating more stable earnings potential over time. And I think that is that reliability and the removal of uncertainty is incredibly powerful in an economy, because our players know that if they come and play today or play tomorrow or play 6 months from now, the potential and opportunity that they have in our universe has not dramatically changed. Now, mechanics will change and earnings potential and opportunities will change, but by and large, there's a certain level of stability in the earnings potential. I'll just make one more point here. And this, I actually want to get a little bit back into Super Phoenix DAO and what they're doing and how this kind of creates an entirely different economic opportunity, because they can monetize the entertainment products that they're creating within the game, and that game experience itself is valuable. And so they don't even need to rely on the game economy itself to be able to monetize the asset that they own. But just one other facet here, I think, in terms of a successful economy, is that we're building out very deep layers of complexity throughout the game. And while that can pose some challenges for a new player, because it steepens the learning curve to be able to play, what it accomplishes is creating pockets of opportunities for individual players. And so if you're able to go into the game and specialize in any particular production aspect, you might be in a much lower competitive field of being able to produce that item and then sell that item to other players who need it or want it. And this differs from a very simple game economy where everybody can do everything all the time, and then there's no real demand for exchange between users. And so for us, I would say a midterm or longer term objective is to continue to deepen the complexity of the game, and also facilitate this trade between users so they're less reliant on an inflation curve, which does exist. There is an Atlas token subsidy that goes into the game now, but eliminate the reliance for that and transition it more into a peer-to-peer trade-based economy.
Yeah, and adding the complexity increases the amount that the users stay and play in the game, which then therefore improves and increases the value that they're creating for themselves and their accounts, and then their ability to trade within that. Craig, I wanted to get your take on a couple of things that Michael just mentioned there. Was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I can chime in on that quite a bit, because the really that whole those economics, right, were really the kind of the catalyst and the inspiration for Super Phoenix DAO. It was the reason I personally got involved pretty early in what Star Atlas was building. Right, that economic depth was extremely intriguing. Right, I went through that initial economics paper pretty thoroughly, I think, back in the day, and it's an amazing hook, right, because it's very new. They're still, I agree that they're executing on it better than pretty much any other game I'm aware of out there in the space. And again, it creates so much depth that it allows us to do something like the Super Phoenix DAO, where we can distribute those in-game revenues, and we have the ability to, share in some of the IP through the build program and create these additional verticals that can all, create value for our DAO members and our token holders, et cetera, within the ecosystem that Star Atlas is building. So it's pretty amazing to see it already functioning, even though it's still in kind of its infancy, and create that kind of consistency long term, like Michael mentioned.
Yeah,
I might just add, one more thing here, just to dovetail on
yeah,
Craig's
please.
comments, and it's I think that there's a philosophical approach that we take as a studio too that makes all of this possible, and it is this idea that there's kind of a pass-through value capture direct to the players, and maybe just to give an example of that, I had emphasized how important the peer-to-peer exchange or trade is in the game. Well, most conventional studios want to monetize their players as much as possible. And so they would not allow for players to craft anything of value to sell to another player, because that's an opportunity that's lost
Mm,
by the
yeah,
studio itself, right? And that's base resources. So in our game, the four core consumable resources that are required to operate our food, fuel, ammunition, and toolkits. That list will probably expand over time. But if you're traveling through the stars and discovering new territories, you're burning fuel as you do that. Um, Now it would be very simple for us to say, well, Automata, our studio, is going to produce the fuel and sell it to players that they burn, and that becomes a revenue stream for us. But what we're very conscientious of and try to facilitate is the distribution of those means of production down to the players. So it's players that are mining hydrogen and crafting fuel and selling it to other
nice.
players, and that's what creates the opportunity. And it's because of that people like Craig and groups like Super Phoenix DAO are able to capitalize and monetize on it themselves.
Yeah, so cool and so interesting. I think you've explained it eloquently really well there. And I like what you said, like in-game economy really lends itself well to that intersection of gaming and the blockchain. It facilitates it so well. Like you mentioned with eBay, and you were having issues, and now um people are looking at games which have strong economies as potential sources of income to actually grow and develop. And that's why that complexity that you're talking about makes it even more exciting for someone who wants to play in game, because it's more of an opportunity, and it's really creating this whole online opportunity. How do you value that? Like that's invaluable, right? Creating an economy where people can earn, learn, trade, and being at the forefront of participating in it or offering that must be something you guys are super proud of, right?
It is. I'm going to make a statement here, and I hope this doesn't sound dystopian, but just to demonstrate how this can really blossom and flourish going into the future, I'll say when, not if, the Super Phoenix DAO is successful at hosting these events. Like, imagine the opportunity for somebody to be employed working on the Super Phoenix DAO, maybe working a concession stand and interacting
Wow.
with other players. And maybe it's an hourly rate or maybe it's an event-based rate, but it's there's literally job opportunities that are in the game that don't rely even on the broader game economy. Again,
Mhm.
it's here are things that are happening now. There was actually a real world example of this. I haven't experienced it myself, but IKEA, I think, pays people $14 an hour to be like a sales rep on the sales floor of the IKEA metaverse concept or virtual world.
Wow.
And so we're already seeing this start to emerge. And again, I think the potential for that to exist in a digital universe like Star Atlas is very real.
100%. Yeah, I would agree.
Craig, was there anything you wanted to add there? Because
No, I could go on. I think that could go on much longer than it probably ought to. But yes, I wholeheartedly agree. And I've already had plenty of those kind of conversations offline with folks who are already members of the Super Phoenix DAO, some of the guilds, etc. There's just unbelievable, unlimited amount of ideas that folks have for the types of little things that they can do and offer inside of these spaces. So yeah, it's exciting, and there's going to be a lot more than people probably think of or realize right now.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there with exciting, because if you're a community member and you're listening to this conversation that you guys are having right now, you can only be insanely bullish with the direction this is going in. And that's why it's so cool. I wanted to, Craig, just shift the conversation a little bit in terms of brands that are entering the space and becoming a part of this economy. We're seeing sports, major Hollywood IPs, music, as you mentioned there, Michael. What does it mean for gaming that you're seeing all of these IPs and brands that are coming into the space? And how is the Super Phoenix DAO working with brands to enhance that player experience? Are there any projects or brands that you're working with that are going to facilitate these events?
That's a great question. So we're kind of taking like we're taking a dual approach to that, as in some of the experiences we're looking to offer and the verticals we're looking to stand up are, I would say, are probably mimicking some of the leaders in those traditional spaces like esports, et cetera. One that we're actually looking at in development at the moment is almost a DraftKings like experience, right? Based on the racing modules that Star Atlas is putting out. And so, again, from the entertainment lens, we're looking at being able to create a truly customized sort of spectator sport entertainment type style for folks who, because obviously you can get in and you can race and you can participate, and that's great. But there's a much larger audience we can address, that just want to observe, right? That want to watch, that want to partake, that want to maybe place a wager on their favorite racer, and then get some more in-depth kind of cool entertainment aspects of that, which we're looking at ways to kind of offer and deliver that, right? And that's just in the esports side. I think there's a huge opportunity for brands, traditional brands that are making their way, into this space, right? And so with the idea of collaborations and sponsorships, I think we are seeing that on some of the larger platforms currently. And so there's absolutely a huge opportunity for some of those things. As far as artists and music, that's one we're also pursuing pretty heavily right now. And in the next couple of months, I do have in-person meetings with two fairly large kind of in real life venue operators, so that we can look at, what are some of the milestones that Super Phoenix DAO has to achieve for them to be interested, get on board, potentially have some kind of naming rights type of a setup, and being able to even live stream some of those already live events that exist in real space. That's one opportunity. And then the other, which we can probably touch on a little bit here when we get into it, is some of the advances with AI now and how that's moving forward. Because with some of that, we're looking at sort of the synthetic type of music genre generation. And we've also got contacts with effectively Grammy winning artists. I've got conversations coming up with a couple of people I can't currently name, unfortunately, but I've got to solidify those and work through it. But excellent songwriters that have been in the industry for years and years and years, that are very well connected. And so we're looking to bring them in on some of these concepts that we want to bring, into the space, into Super Phoenix DAO, into the virtual world, and ultimately help with kind of that onboarding and these verticals we want to deliver in the entertainment side.
Really, really exciting. Michael, I know you were nodding your head there. Was there anything you wanted to just touch on before we head to the next part there? Just around brands, IP coming into the gaming space and how that's going to impact?
So many great comments there, I think, to touch on. From the brand's perspective, where we're creating our core commercial hubs and center points of the game are through central space stations, and there's one for each of the three different factions, the Mud, the Ooster, and the Oni within the game. And in these commercial districts that are kind of enveloped and surrounded by player habitats and residential
Yeah.
buildings. That's where we expect major brands to come in that want to sell, I would say, predominantly digital goods, but I do see this potentially evolving into, instead of going on to, I'll just use IKEA example again, IKEA.com, and like going through the shop and picking something out and buying something. The potential will exist for you to essentially uh, create a replication of some item that's available in IKEA and kind of envision it being in your real house and then being able to purchase that item and have it shipped to you physically. I think that potential is very real. But I did want to dovetail on Craig's comments about esports, because I think that is a really cool big opportunity for events here as well. Now, esports has gone through some turbulence, but I mean, hey, it got added to the Olympics, and people do like to watch streamers and they like to watch competitive gaming. Now, typically that is done by watching a 2D stream like this is. What's cool about Star Atlas, and with some of our ambitions for hyperscale user concurrency, where we want tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of users all in a single instance, all in one place. Well, when we do have those racing events, and when the Super Phoenix DAO and the Super Phoenix asset has its own dedicated race course, you could invite people to that to watch this race live in a 3D environment in the Star Atlas universe, which I think is really cool. It opens up opportunities for things like betting. I mean, the first thing we're focused on is skill-based betting, which has kind of lower regulatory compliance requirements. Obviously, if you're going to introduce real DraftKings style betting of players, you have to make sure you have licenses and the ability to legally execute on those types of operations. But I think that the opportunity is present, and for somebody who's driven enough, they can figure out how to make that work. And it'd be kind of cool to walk into a stadium on the Super Phoenix DAO and bet on your favorite gamer slash racer in the game, and then you get to watch them live right there from the stands. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah, it really is. I wanted to head into some of the less exciting things about decentralization in gaming and ownership. So I'm going to get your thoughts on that. But just before we do that, for anyone who is watching today, we do have a giveaway of 50,000 Atlas tokens. The instructions on how you can do that are in the comments below this video. So if you're watching this video live on X, head to the comment section and there's some instructions on how you can win that. All you need to do is follow the Super Phoenix DAO, follow Star Atlas, and repost that post. This is going to be live for 24 hours. The announcement will be posted on the X profile of Super Phoenix DAO, and we're going to choose one winner for that. Craig, with decentralized giving players more control over assets and game content, how do you see this changing the way that gaming develops is monetized? Now, what challenges come with decentralizing gaming ownership and storytelling? Do you see any challenges that are within that?
Yeah, there's a couple components there. I would say there's certainly a challenge, right? I mean, we're looking to effectively decentralize and monetize, what is the Super Phoenix ship within Star Atlas, right? And even that comes with its challenges in the way that we have to kind of build out this entire infrastructure that we're working on. So not only do we, work to kind of seed and grow these verticals I was talking about that add value, to the people who participate, but then being able to make sure everyone has a voice, work through all of the mechanics of governance, proper governance, eventually to the point where we can do things like offer rev share, et cetera, on these things to make it valuable to people who are participating, players, creators, even investors, etc. There's a lot of complexity to that, and it takes a while to kind of pull it all together and walk through that process. I'm sure Michael's very familiar. It's quite similar, I think, on kind of the larger meta with the game itself, and the DAO and the things that they've created. But yeah, I would say those things are still complicated, but there are, I mean, almost regularly there are new tools and new opportunities for us to kind of move forward and build these things out, which is phenomenal. And obviously we've got a great dev core with Super Phoenix DAO that are really well connected with Solana directly, and that helps us a lot to be able to facilitate these things, and bring them forward like we can. But I would say the future of it, I really look at the user generated content piece of it. I think that's going to be massive as we go forward. I know games like Star Atlas obviously have a ways to go to get to that point, with providing kind of the base gameplay and the environments for us to do that. But as we mentioned before, right, in a concert, those types of things, it's going to be almost second nature for us to create digital merch, right, that go with a specific event, or a specific thing that we're doing, that people can buy or participate in or collect or whatever. We've already started kind of our internal badge system within the Super Phoenix DAO.
Yeah.
And even though that's very early phase, there's a whole plan and a blueprint for that, where it tracks into kind of not just gameplay and ownership and management of the asset, but then also becomes these 3D collectibles, becomes these items that'll be issued in game, and can continue to deliver value to folks long term, right?
Amazing. And Michael, was there anything you wanted to just touch on with that?
Well, I just on that final comment, the other thing about some of these digital collectibles, which players do love customization. I mean, cosmetics is a huge revenue stream for traditional studios, but it also represents a form of a status symbol as well. Whether that be demonstrating that you were participating in something early, which people absolutely love. Hey, I've got this Super Phoenix DAO badge that I got on the day that it launched, and look what tier I reached, right? And being able to show that off in perpetuity is something that players place a lot of value in, and that doesn't have to be an item that creates a revenue stream, for example, for the player, like our capital assets do, but just owning it and being able to show that off represents tremendous value. In terms of challenges of decentralization, they're certainly numerous. On the regulatory front alone, there's still a tremendous amount of uncertainty. There's no real frameworks, and in particular, emerging from the last several years, where it seemed that there was an effort to stifle crypto more broadly and Bitcoin and kind of the innovation that's taking place in the industry, in a way trying to kill it. Something like that is a force that we have to face that is largely outside of our control. And so, at least what we do focus on internally is trying to understand the frameworks, the guardrails, any regulatory guidance that we have, and navigate that as best we can. But again, there was a whole lot of uncertainty over the last couple of years. We don't really have any certainty now. And so a part of being on this emerging tech and these emerging concepts of decentralized ownership of everything is that we've got to figure it out. We are blazing the trail. And so part of being a pioneer is that there's there's no playbook for you to follow along the way. So I think that's one of the challenges. But then I'd also comment on the efficiency of decentralization as being kind of a big unknown as well. Like, can people collectively govern? Can a wide audience collectively govern a complex system like the Super Phoenix DAO, like Star Atlas, like even a DeFi protocol? I mean, is it possible for people to collectively accomplish major goals in those types of systems? I think that's a bit unknown. And then finally, just pointing to the level of coordination that's required to build something like Star Atlas. It has to be largely centralized at the start, because you kind of need a unified vision and single source of direction in order to build this thing out. You can't really decentralize the the development of Star Atlas, but you can decentralize facets of it. And then just looking at the positive side, it's that a big part of our goal is to enable not just UGC, but commercial enterprise in Star Atlas. And that's why we've taken steps to roll out things like our build program at build.staratlas.com. So if you're a developer, there's a tool set available for you there, so you can start to build your own creation and integration into Star Atlas. There's an open IP policy, so you can use the Star Atlas brand to sell merchandise and to produce physical goods. And what I believe is that can enable the IP value to grow exponentially. If you can get thousands or millions of people building something using your IP, it proliferates throughout society and more people know about it, as opposed to relying on a single entity to advertise, promote, and market that thing. So there's a lot of opportunity on the other side, but yes, a lot of uncertainty and challenges with kind of blazing trails.
It's interesting because I had a conversation with some legacy meme tokens last week as a part of my Trust Wallet talks that I do, and it was a very similar conversation. When you're at the forefront of innovation, not only do you have a responsibility, but also you're dealing with these guardrails that are sort of, you know, not really set, a lack of clarity. It is the unknown, but you have this responsibility because you're creating at um, such a powerful rate with such a big community, and you know, with great power comes great responsibility because not
Mhm.
only are you shaping the future of Web3 gaming, you're trying to figure it out along the way. And, you know, to do that and do it successfully is what really sets projects apart. And the fact that you're thinking about IP and proliferation within that, you know, like, is in, if it isn't difficult enough, but now you're thinking about, you know, onboarding the next million people, it really goes to show like the level or the depth that you're thinking about, or how seriously you're taking that responsibility, you know, to actually be that trailblazer, because someone has to do it, and the ones
Mhm.
that do it well are the ones that win.
The, but the opportunity exists in the unknown, so
There we go.
I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I think it's true. Just as we head into the last 10 minutes, I wanted to just ask one question about um immersive gaming, you know, especially as we're talking about this entertainment piece, which I know is big for the Super Phoenix DAO. um there is a fine line between realism and accessibility in immersive gaming. What do you see are the biggest hurdles for developers, you know, in creating truly engaging immersive worlds, you know, without alienating players with complex like hardware requirements? How do you find that balance? How do you make that concert, that experience fun as a developer for someone, you know, to experience that? Craig, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. I think, obviously Michael's going to have some opinion, I think, on this too, because they work at it, I think, on a regular basis and
Yeah.
think through that on multiple levels. And obviously having, I think right now the one of the best solutions appears to be kind of having duality there, right? Having similar experiences that are paralleled in, different ways or different environments that folks can access, not just with a high-end gaming PC, but also, whether it's mobile or it's web-based, et cetera. That seems to be, an extremely valuable way to kind of go about it. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Obviously, if I bring it back or bring it down to kind of Super Phoenix DAO, we're looking to do very similar types of things, because even in the reality of kind of the full high fidelity of what will be Star Atlas and the Super Phoenix ship and those amazing venues that'll be built and live in that space, until we get to that phase, until those spaces are available for everybody to be immersed in, we still have to try and create how those experiences are going to work and bring people together, and create kind of the, let's say, wireframe version of that, in anticipation of it, which is what, we talk about with some of these things that we want to do with the spectator version of the racing, or we want to, possibly do collaborations with other projects who can kind of help us bridge the gap temporarily and give us optionality with our audience as we grow. But yeah, ultimately, I think kind of doing those things in parallel until the technology really catches up and can kind of help folks jump on board, right? I'm sure, things like VR and Vision Pro and that kind of stuff is amazing and fully immersive. They're hard to get, they're expensive. It's
Mm.
early phase for that tech. But I would assume, like anything else, it's going to be as ubiquitous as a cell phone is today, 5-10 years from now, right? So we just have to bridge the gap until then.
Yeah,
I,
I agree, Michael. Let's hear your thoughts. I'd love to know what you're thinking.
well, I think on that last piece that Craig mentioned, is effectively the um, is a Moore's law. I think it's Moore's law, but I mean, hardware capabilities have increased dramatically, and hardware costs have come down substantially. However, I think we're still decades away the from every person globally being able to have access to
Mm.
equipment that would enable them to engage in these hyper realistic experiences. I think that is it's a bit challenging. Now we're kind of addressing some of the accessibility challenges through a few different mediums, and one of those is building across multiple environments. One of our products is in browser, so it's far easier for anyone to engage with. And well, it's I'll caveat and say it's not mobile optimized, but you can at least engage in Sage, Star Atlas Golden Era on a mobile device or on a tablet or on
Yeah.
a lower end gaming PC. Now that doesn't address the question of immersion, because it's certainly a much lower fidelity version of our game. But it is one way to get access to the game economy and to the gameplay mechanics. Um, I would say in our case, there's also another challenge that is posed, which is the financial barrier to entry, because we do have very expensive assets across Star Atlas. The Super Phoenix Titan is valued at an MSRP or origination price of $5 million. And I'm like, not too many people are able to go in and buy a video game asset, so to speak, for that amount of money. And so, but even going all the way down the scale to our, our smallest ships, spending $100 on a ship could be difficult depending on where you're from in the world. And so we did just announce yesterday our fleet rental system, which I would say in some ways is analogous to a scholarship model, not entirely, but generally the idea with this fleet rental platform is that owners of assets can list them on this marketplace and make it available for people to rent for, a limited period of time. In much the same way that you would, if you travel somewhere, you rent a car to drive around and use while you're in that distant location. So I think this kind of addresses some of the onboarding financial barriers, but it also addresses some of the kind of the economics for the smaller end players of being able to get in, play the game, earn, and then hopefully build wealth for themselves, and then leverage that wealth to either reinvest back into the game if they want to, or do something else with. Now, just to the immersion piece, one of the areas that we are focused on is cloud gaming. And so for anyone that's not familiar, it's essentially you're connecting to a remote gaming PC in the cloud, and it manages all of the graphical processing components of it and streams that to you. Again, that can stream to a mobile device, it can stream to a tablet, or it can stream to a lower end desktop PC. And now you have access to that fully immersive environment without having to spend the money on the hardware. However, cloud gaming has its own costs associated with it that need to be figured out. But I will shout out Shaga here, who we've been collaborating with now for many months, actually probably going on a year. And Shaga is a DPIN pixel streaming or cloud gaming enterprise that allows people that have the gaming PCs to monetize their dormant PC resources when they're not using it. And it also allows players to connect directly to a gaming PC that's closer to them geographically in the world. And so we're trying to tackle all of these things, but certainly need partners to work with on this, because it's these are all big undertakings in their own right.
Yeah, I was going to say massive in their own right, especially deep in, that comes with its own challenges as well. But it's really cool to see that these conversations are happening, right? It's cool to see that these are underway, partnerships are being assessed, just so that you can really maximize or access as many people as possible and give them the best experience that they can, within the means of what they can make happen, that can be facilitated, whether it's renting, whether it's deep in, whether it's cloud. And I think that's really cool. I know we are heading into the last few minutes of the show today, so I just wanted to get your take on AI. And I'm not gonna specifically ask anything, because I want to see and hear how you're thinking about it. How are you thinking about AI in your strategy meetings, in your conversations? We'll go to Michael first, and then we'll head over to Craig. When you are discussing AI within Star Atlas, how does that conversation look?
Well, there's a lot of enthusiasm. I mean, I simply put, now we've been considering AI since the inception of our studio in 2020 and really in 2021 as part of the gaming concept. And there's a lot of facets to this. I could probably speak for an hour just on the different ways that we could integrate AI, and I won't do that.
We really could do a whole show just on AI, and we should as well, because it's an important conversation. But yeah.
To keep things kind of brief here at the tail end of the stream, I'll say one of them is on kind of a tool set available to our team. So can we increase production time and shipping rate of the product because we're leveraging AI tools? Now that's for art asset production, for example. And I'm posing these as hypotheticals because there's also a whole philosophical debate about using AI for art production, for example. But at least theoretically, it would be possible to produce art assets faster using AI tooling, as well as on the code side. If our engineers are capable of using AI to essentially guide the process of writing the underlying code for the game? Can we, again, ship features faster as a result of that? But I think some of the more front-facing, exciting things are like NPC agents that are that provide human-like interactions with our players. And this kind of goes back to one of my original comments about the idea of player collisions. When you're immersed in these games, you want to be socializing with other people. And in some cases, if you're in some distant remote region of space in Star Atlas, there might not be any other live players there, but it can be populated with NPC agents that interact with you as if they are a live person. And I think that's really cool. I think the idea that these agents can also, they have genuine agency in the sense that they can go and make decisions about how to interact in the game. One of the conversations I've been having with teams is kind of a dispersion effect where the NPCs can go decide, do we want to go populate and exploit a particular planet, and maybe the resources on that planet are getting exhausted. And so those NPCs independently decide, okay, it's time to lift roots and go find another planet to exploit. Now that becomes an entire dynamic within the game that we're not actually
Crazy.
managing. We're not
Yeah,
writing
that's
the script for
crazy.
that. It's just happening. Um, and then the third piece here, and the final piece I'll mention, is on kind of your virtual companion or virtual assistant within the game. And we see a lot of value here in being able to, in some ways, replace the tutorial script and some of the introductory missions where you learn how to play the game, and replace that with a companion that can answer questions for you. And it's an LLM backend that, again, you can have a dialogue with and you can ask questions to. And it has the full knowledge base and knowledge graph of everything that's happening within Star Atlas. And it can guide a player through the entire experience. And it can go so far as to, you might hop into the game one day and say, hey, where can I make the most money? What should I be mining today? And
Yeah.
it's already done all of the analysis of the entire economy, and it can essentially identify for you where is best to spend your time. That's just one thing. On the fun side, maybe it's, hey, where are the battles taking place? Because I want to get into some action today. And it tells you where to go. So I think these are all massive opportunities, and really, we're living through a really exciting time.
Really exciting. I mean, as I mentioned there, and I'm sorry to cut in, but we really could have a whole conversation just on AI, and that's why I kept it open, because I wanted to see what aspects of the business you were looking at and assessing it from, whether it's operations with the coders, whether it's UX from within game, or whether it's supporting learning more, doing more, or earning more within game as an agent. There's so many facets there that it can support. Craig, over to you. How is the Super Phoenix DAO looking at and thinking about AI? Just in conjunction with what Michael said there.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, we have a little bit different lens, right, when we're looking at kind of the
Yeah.
entertainment aspect as we do. I think there are a lot of opportunities when you're in true game development, like Michael and Star Atlas, and not that we can't look to some of those as well, but clearly the thing that's most interesting to us right now at this point is AI agents, right? And so in our case, rather than an NPC or an AI agent who might be your companion or your kind of help you navigate. In our regard, we're looking at creating true autonomous identities of people who can be entertainers, performers, kind of key people of influence, right? That you can create a complete persona of, and not only can they then work and host and kind of live within these 3D virtual venues that we're looking to build, but they can also now go off into kind of the wider world of social media, if you will, and interact and post and share, and kind of build a fan base autonomously outside of like our direction, and kind of similar to the things Michael's talking about in game, right? You could have NPCs go off and build a colony. We're looking at the same thing about creating, an entertainer persona that can go off and create a following that may not even be related to folks who are currently aware of us or in Star Atlas, right? And that whole mechanism is unbelievably fascinating. We're looking at a couple of the protocols right now that are helping facilitate that. And then, like I said, with some of the conversations we're going to be having with people in the actual industry, we want to see if we can create a bridge or a way forward with that. But it's incredibly interesting. I think there's huge value, huge potential there. And our goal is to get something up and running this year for Super Phoenix DAO.
I think the word you said there was fascinating. I completely agree. Like, you know, we're speaking about this and it's very tangible, like you said, the end of the year and something that we're going to be experiencing. We have actually come to the end of the show, but I wanted to just ask one final question to you both. If you could just give me, you know, your shortest and sharpest answer, and we'll keep it specific to the Super Phoenix DAO. Michael, what are you most excited about in the Super Phoenix DAO over the next 12 to 18 months?
I'll keep it very short. I'm excited to see it launch.
Oh, me too, buddy. And Craig, how about for you? Because you're in the trenches, you're working on it day
Fair,
in, day out.
fair.
What are you most excited about?
Uh, I guess launch is also on the list, but most important to us, I think, is getting to the plateau where we have some of these entertainment verticals stood up and functioning, that folks can come in and participate. So we've got at least 2 on the docket, 3 in the roadmap, and that's the goal for 2025.
Amazing.
Pav, I have one question for you.
Sure.
When does the name update to Pav_Soul?
You know what? As I was looking at the screen today, I thought, I wonder if anyone's going to ask me that. It's crazy that you did. I actually paid for the gas on the ENS on my Pav.eth again last month. I think I paid like $600. So
Wow.
yeah, I think I'll be keeping it for a bit longer. I just wanted to say a massive thank you to you both. Michael, really appreciate you taking the time to jump on the conversation today. You know, really, really inspired with what you guys are building, and Craig as well, you too. So a massive thank you. And to everyone who tuned in as well. We do have a giveaway. If you haven't already, head to the comment that's below this post. Follow Super Phoenix DAO and Star Atlas for a chance to win 50,000 Atlas. That announcement is going to go out in the next 24 hours. Guys, was there anything you wanted to say just before we close?
Craig.
No, I think we're in good shape. This is great. I appreciate everybody coming on, and obviously Pav kind of moderating for us today. And Michael, it's great to talk to you. I know we need to catch up a little more often.
Yeah, well, thank you guys. Really great discussion today. Really inspiring from my side as well. Love that final comment from Craig about you know, the independent personality of an AI agent. I think that's so cool. I think there's aren't there AI Instagram models that are making money right now? I don't know. There's crazy things going on. So
Yeah, that's on our radar. Yep.
yeah, we've got a super exciting year ahead with Star Atlas, though, an action-packed release schedule. So stay tuned. Thank you guys for the time, and I'm sure we'll chat again
Yeah,
soon.
we'll check back in a couple of months. We'd love to do this again. You know, with 3 of us sit down and we have a conversation just about what's changed since we've spoken about today. I'm really excited for that as well. I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone who tuned in. This is Super Phoenix DAO Live. My name is Pav. We're joined with Michael and Craig. Have an amazing rest of your day, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.